evening, everyone, and welcome. Tonight's video is inspired by Welsh ASMR 82, and I recommend you go to his channel, check him out. I've been watching his channel for I think like almost a year, and I really like it. He does a lot of map videos, so he goes over different maps of different places, and I find it really nice and relaxing, and definitely helps me sleep. And so tonight's video is a different kind of map. We're going to be looking at maps of the human body. Because that's more the kind of map that I spend my time looking at. And I thought today we could look at the spine. Oh, there's thunder in the background. I don't know if you can hear it. This is the first sort of summer thunderstorm of the year. It got up to like 80 degrees today. In Celsius, I think that's like, let's go with 28 degrees, more or less. So it is summery outside. Maybe less than, no, I think 27, 28. I don't often use Celsius for weather temperature. I think of it more about body temperature. So I know 37 degrees is body temperature, and 25 is more like room temperature. So let's go with, 28, 29. I'll look it up later and see how close I was. Okay. So, this is a big book. And here, I opened it straight up to the spine. The spine, or spinal column, has two main functions. It serves as a protective surrounding for the delicate spinal cord and forms the supporting backbone of the skeleton. The spine consists of 24 separate, differently shaped bones, vertebrae, with a curved triangular bone, the sacrum, at the bottom. The sacrum is made up of fused vertebrae. At its lower end is a small, tail-like structure made up of tiny bones, collectively called the coccyx. Between each pair of vertebrae is a disc of cartilage that cushions the bones during movement. The top two vertebrae differ in appearance from the others and work as a pair. The first, called the atlas, rotates around a stout vertical peg on the second, called the axis. This arrangement allows the skull to move freely up and down and from side to side. So, here's a frontal view of the spinal column and all the vertebrae. There are cervical vertebrae at the top, thoracic vertebrae sort of in the middle, lumbar vertebrae down closer to the bottom, and sacral vertebrae, followed by the coccygeal vertebrae. Down here they've labeled out the numbers. 7 cervical vertebrae. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 thoracic vertebrae. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lumbar vertebrae. So if we look at it from this way, you can see the curvature of the spine and then the little tail that we don't have. The cervical vertebrae are really at the top of your body. Your thoracic is more where your rib cage is. And then lumbar, we're getting down closer to your sacrum or your tail. Here we have a cross section where you can see what the vertebrae look like inside. So there are blood vessels on either side. The vertebral artery or vertebral artery. One thing I enjoy about medical terms is that Americans and people from the UK pronounce them entirely differently. I'm not certain why that is. And from what I can tell, Canadians tend to favor the British pronunciation, and I think Australians do too. So that was a loud thunder. I personally prefer the American pronunciations. I think some of the British pronunciations are a little silly. For example, there's the word skeleton, and if you're talking about muscle, you can say skeletal muscle, but British people and Canadian people will say skeletal muscle. I was very surprised the first time I heard it pronounced that way. I thought perhaps the man who said it was unfamiliar with the term or the word, but turns out it was a regional difference. But this is all to say that, for the most part, I have learned the American pronunciations of these medical terms, and so forgive me for how I talk. A vertebral artery. This is the vertebral body in here. Anterior median fissure is sort of between the actual spinal cord and where the protective spine is. This, of course, is the spinal cord, and one thing worth noticing is how small it is compared to all the big bone here. The actual cord is very little. If we look closer at the spinal cord, you'll notice the outside is white. We call that white matter. And it's made up of axon tracts, axon tracts that go all the way down from your brain, all the way down your spinal cord to where your spinal cord ends, and you just have all these nerve bundles exiting out down here by your coccyx. There's the anterior horn of the spinal cord and the posterior horn, but actually that's not what we call it. We call them ventral and dorsal. So the ventral horn and the dorsal horn. Dorsal, you can think of like a dorsal fin, so it's going to be on the back, right? So dorsal is this side, and ventral is this side. And the darker part in the middle of the spinal cord, I think looks like a butterfly. It's shaped like a little butterfly. And that is the gray matter, and that is where neurons live. So your motor neurons and inner neurons. spinous process of cervical vertebra. Yeah, because the vertebra have little spines on them. The dura mater is a layer, kind of a thick, rough layer that covers your spinal cord and your brain as well. It's a little bit thinner on the cord than it is on the brain. The lateral column, which is axon tracts, the posterior root, or generally called the ventral root. Possibly the posterior, anterior, ventral, dorsal thing is the difference between humans and non-humans. Because to be honest, I spend most of my time looking at animals, not humans. Posterior branch of a spinal nerve, and anterior branch of a spinal nerve. Spinal ganglion is in here, and those are also called dorsal root ganglion, or dorsal root ganglia, or DRG for short. Though we don't call them trunk, we say DRG, or dorsal root ganglia, and that is where your sensory neurons live. Sensory like touch, any sort of touching feeling, or temperature, or the knowledge of where your muscles are in relationship to each other. So like how stretched your muscles are, how hard you're working, that sort of sensory information. The cell bodies are in the spinal ganglion. Okay, so that is the map of the cross-section of the spinal cord. Down here we have the sacrum, which I'm actually less familiar with because there is no gray matter in the sacrum. These are just bones now, and I am not a bone scientist. But let's see, there's the ala, the sacral promontory, auricular surface, sacral foramen, site of fusion of vertebral bodies, facet for coccyx, and the lateral part of the sacrum. Then here we have the cornu and the transverse process. On our lumbar vertebra, we have the pedicle, the body, the vertebral foramen, the transverse process, inferior articular process, lamina, spinous process, and superior articular process, and a facet. Over here on the thoracic vertebra, there's the superior articular process, the body, the transverse process, vertebral foramen, spinous process, lamina, and costal facet. You might notice your lumbar vertebra is much larger than your thoracic vertebra. The spinal cord actually goes through a thickening in the lumbar area because that is where control of your legs is located. And you need a lot of neurons and a lot of nerves, a lot of nervous system in order to control all of that. So the lumbar cord can get quite thick. Thoracic, meanwhile, is closer to your trunk. And while our trunks are powerful, they do not need to do very much. We don't need to have fine control over our trunks, and we don't need to have that much sensory input. It's not as important as what we get from our hands or from our feet. Here we have the cervical vertebra. There's the body, the superior articular process, the spinous process, vertebral foramen, transverse foramen, posterior tubercle, and anterior tubercle. This is the axis, which was one of the special vertebra in the cervical area. The facet, the dens, the transverse process and foramen, the lamina, the spinous process, and the vertebral foramen. And here's the atlas, which is your top vertebra. The lateral mass is superior articular facet, the posterior arch, posterior tubercle, transverse foramen, transverse process, vertebral foramen, anterior tubercle, and anterior arch. So this is the anatomy of your spine. And you can see the curvature here. It's why some people recommend you sleep with a pillow under your spine to provide support for the natural curvature that we have. And why you might want a pillow for your neck too. Okay, I'm going to end this here, but if you want to see more anatomy, you should let me know. Talk about bones and joints, or muscles. Muscles have very fun names. More muscles. The nervous system, which is my particular focus. I have better pictures of brains than what we have in this book, so if you want to know about that, we can go over it. Now the ear is very cool. The cochlea is just amazing, and the labyrinth, all these things. Your ear is such a specialized and interesting organ. It's one of my favorites. So let me know if you want to see any of this, and I'll go over it for you. And in the meanwhile, go check out Welsh ASMR 82's channel. I put a link to it